The gentleman from New York, Mr. D'Esposito, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make it very clear that I think all of our colleagues, the Republicans, have been very concerned about the response of the National Guard, which is why most of us have asked questions about the timing, about the authority, about you getting permission, and the fact that you had to get answers from two individuals who clearly were taking their orders from Speaker Pelosi. So I just want to make that very clear. Just touching quickly on the chamber evacuations, the Capitol was breached at 2:12 p.m. The House chamber did not start evacuating to 2:28. What was the reason for the delay?
I'm not really sure what the reason for the delay is.
Okay.
They should have been called, the evacuation should have definitely been called earlier.
And who would have made that decision?
When I was up in the command center, I had two assistant chiefs with me that are in charge of operations. I had one assistant chief that's in charge of member protection, intelligence and protection, one in charge of uniformed operations. Either of those could have called it, but it should have been called earlier.
Okay. And do you know what time the Senate chamber was evacuated?
I'll see if I have it in my, give me 1 second, sorry about that. I'm sorry. I don't have that right in front of me right now, sir, sorry.
No worries. So I'll move on to something else. So yesterday, Chairman Stile hosted a security briefing here in this room, brought all the stakeholders, the law enforcement agencies that oversee the Washington, D.C. area into one room to talk about the spiking violent crime and what we can do better. And I think something that has been a common theme, and probably not one that we're really proud of, but a common theme that we've all heard is staffing issues when it comes to the Capitol Police. Obviously, I think any law enforcement agency around the country right now would agree that the more people in uniform, the better. In your book, you wrote that on January 6th, United States Capitol Police would be subjected to the greatest staffing demands on the department's limited resources. And that, quote, this would make pulling together the staffing for a large CDU detail even more difficult. What was it specifically about January 6th and the joint session that placed such significant demands on the staffing of your department?
Anytime you have a joint session of Congress where you have both the House and Senate in session as well as the Vice President, they're holding a joint hearing. It's going to take a lot of work. And the problem that we have is with the Electoral College, when you're in there doing the certification, it can likely run into the early morning hours. So you have to prepare for 24-hour staffing for that. So that's what takes a lot of the resources. You know, we had prepared for, I think it was 223 hard CDU officers, as well as some officers on the perimeter. And that's about the most we can get on the outside. But it takes a lot of our staffing on the inside, sir.
So you spent over 3 decades in the law enforcement arena. Public safety, emergency management, it's all kind of tied in there. And as someone who has spent most of his adult life in the emergency management world, one of the questions that we always ask ourselves is, are we better off today than we were when we saw the last event unfold? And my question to you is, are we better off today than, God forbid, if we saw an event like January 6th unfold again?
So I continue to be concerned. I know, like you'd mentioned, I think there was an influx of money coming in. That was key for getting some of the equipment and helping out with the training, but the officers are still very, very short. Right. They're getting overworked, they're getting held over, and still making training difficult. But I would say as far as some of the equipment coming in, yes. As far as some of the politicization, which is the number one thing I'd recommend, you know, there's no reason you should be going and having members of Congress in an approval or review category for laws overseeing the Capitol Police. So that needs to be restricted. You know, let the Capitol Police Chief do his job.
I agree.
That's the number one thing I can say.
Leave policing to the law enforcement professionals.
That is correct. And if they mess up, hold them accountable. Exactly.
Well, thank you for your service, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I also want to clarify something Mr. Morelli brought up regarding bringing Mr. Irving before this committee. It is the intention of this committee to bring Mr. Irving before our committee, whether in a hearing or in a transcribed interview, which if either takes place, we will notify the minority and invite them to participate.